Hello and welcome to UK versus a first for the channel today, I guess. Let's take a look at the Jin Starter Deck for Grand Archive. This is a deck that I was lucky enough to get to play at the Grand Archive Ascent London. I got to play in the side event. I went up against some very powerful decks, and this is the first time I ever got to play Grand Archive, so I wanted to just come on and talk about this deck because I actually know a little bit about it. And once I've had a chance to play them, I'll give Kongming and Tanois their fair crack as well. But I don't know what they do yet, and I haven't opened them yet because I'm waiting to play some more My Little Boy. I signed up for a side event where you started off with a starter deck. I asked the member of staff what their recommendations were. They took me through all the options, which was very cool. And then they told me their personal recommendation would be for Jin. And once I heard that he becomes immortal, I was sold. That sounds like a really cool concept, and I was interested in how a deck would play around an immortal character. So in Grand Archive, you have two decks. You have your material deck, and you have your main deck. Your main deck is where you draw from every single turn, making up your hand and the playable cards. Your material deck is where you materialize your champion, their weapons, artifacts and utilities that they can use to progress the game state and move the game state forward. This is a very cool concept, and we're seeing more and more card games these days having this multi-deck system, but generally the second deck acts as a resource system. So think of Dawn from One Piece, think of Runes from Riftbound. But this isn't your resource system. This gives you access to power, this gives you access to more health, this gives you access to utility and abilities and artifacts and weapons that you can use to progress your game state forward, and that's so very cool. So let's start off with the Spirit of Wind. Spirit of Wind is what you materialize first. So at the start of the game, you'll materialize your spirit. That will depend on an element, and you'll do what it says on enter. So in this situation, you draw 7 cards. There's no mulligan in the rules of Grand Archive, which you can't off guard, but I was told that there are spirits that allow you to mulligan, and there are other spirits that have some very powerful abilities that you can get from playing, but do also have their drawbacks to make them more power scaled. If we start with 15 life and a deck full of cards that we draw 7 of, this has no cost, and the cost here is paid from using memory, which is really cool. And so what we want to do first is level up into Jin Fate Deviant level 1. So Jin has 20 health and an inherited ability that when he attacks with a polearm weapon or a polearm attack, I can give a target horse or human ally +1 to their strength for the rest of the turn. And because this is an inherited ability, as long as Jin Fate Defiant is in our lineage, that ability keeps going on. Unlike other card games, you will kind of go down the timeline of your character. Their abilities and skills will evolve, they'll grow as the game progresses. It's kind of taking them from a student to a master, which I absolutely love this kind of aspect of it, not just being one battle you're playing in Grand Archive. It's kind of like a lineage war. Going to Jin Zealous Maverick. This is our level 2, so remember we maintain the ability of level 1. Moving into level 2, we gain Jin Lineage, which allows them to access cards of the inherited Jin lineage. When we level up, when Jin Zealous Maverick is played, our next attack gets +1 might, and we awaken Jin. So we rest him when we attack, and this attack says, cool, your next one, and I enter Jin Zealous Maverick goes, cool, rest him, play the attack, but wake him immediately back up and get to attack again. With this lineage ability, this means if we're attacking with a polearm or a polearm attack, we give one of our horses or humans +1 strength, and then we get to give another one or the same one +1 strength, allowing them to kind of utilize increased strength. Going to this level 2, you should have some units out. There's no immediate benefit to leveling up turn 3 when you've got no units down apart from a 4-point health increase if you can't utilize it. The degree of agency on leveling up in Grand Archive is very skill dependent. The skill ceiling is quite high. Utilizing that your health is a resource is a very good thing to learn in Grand Archive, as well as knowing when and where to level up. And then level 3 at a cost of 3 memory. Each of these increase, so we got 1 memory cost, 2 memory cost, and 3 memory cost. And again, memory is played from is your resource in Grand Archive. We have the Jin lineage, meaning he has both of these abilities. And we have, as long as it's not your end phase, Jin Undying Resolve is immortal. Doesn't matter how much health they have lost. Doesn't matter what you do to them. As long as it's not the end phase, they don't die. Now that means that Jin can die in his end phase. And there's some very cool combat tricks I was told about that you can utilize to kill Jin in his combat, in his end phase. But for this starter deck event, when I hit level 3, the game was kind of over. The starter decks were not quite attuned to deal with this kind of power. After that, we got some very cool tech pieces. We have the Bauble of Abundance. We banish it, each player draws a card. I'm not the biggest fan of giving my opponent more cards because you're also giving them more resources, but giving myself more resources also makes a lot of sense, and it can allow me to do some very cool early tricks where I can gain more resources and allow that to play more cards quickly. Because again, like I said, I want to get a lot of cards out. I want to have a lot of allies in my stage for when I drop the level 2 Jin, so I can hit hard with all of my units quickly. Then we have the Executioner Spear. Executioner Spear is my goat. Now, there is a more powerful polearm in here, but this Regalia weapon is very strong. It enters with 2 durability. Every time you use it, it loses 1 durability. However, if you kill an enemy ally, you gain a durability. This turns Jin in from a character that's looking to keep punching my opponent in the face into a leader of a strategic army going, I need to kill allies so my other units get stronger. So if I swing with Jin, because you got to remember, in Grand Archive, you can only attack if you have a weapon or an attack card in your hand. So once the durability is gone, once these weapons are banished, your character is kind of stuck there. If I can use the Executioner Spear to keep gaining durability, to keep smacking my opponent's allies, weakening them down, taking out their army, especially if I'm attacking their rested units that cannot retaliate, then I'm going to be able to trigger my inherited effect, give my horse or human allies 1 might, make them stronger, and go, I may have not hit you for 1, but I've transferred that 1 to a ally horse unit, and they're going to be coming at you, so I'm hitting you vicariously through them. They've inherited Jin's spirit of damage. I think that's very cool, and if you can utilize that with some attack spells, if you can utilize that with other cards, you can kind of do some crowd control on your opponent's allies. Then we have the Life Essence Amulet. These are all 0 cost memory, so you get to essentially play them for free. Doesn't utilize any resources, doesn't take cards from your hand. The Life Essence Amulet basically says if an ally dies when it's not your turn, so if your opponent kills one of your allies, you may banish Life Essence Amulet and draw a card. When you're running lots of taunters that have to be dealt damage first, or interceptors that can jump in and protect Jin from an enemy attack, this allows me to draw more cards, gain more resources, and possibly unlock spells or other cards that I can now play that I wasn't able to before because I didn't have enough cards at hand. Drawing a card is very powerful, especially when it's only me doing it, and I'm doing it because my opponent's essentially playing the game. Slate Whitestone is a 1 memory cost, so you have to banish 1 memory to play it. With Banish Slate Whitestone, up to 1 polearm weapon gets +1 damage until the end of the turn, and you draw a card. So it basically costs a card from your memory to draw a card, replacing that resource, and give one of your polearms +1 damage. I'll be honest, it's a little bit low impact for me. I didn't utilize this throughout the event, but I can see where this can pop in, and if I need to get a card if I need to get a card defensively so I can play a card, I can utilize that here. Or if I want to hit a little bit harder, utilize my Execution Spear or other cards to be able to kind of hit harder, kill an enemy ally, and utilize that lineage ability. I can see this coming in handy, and drawing cards is always very good. The Steel Helmet is a very cool card. This is, in my first game, this is one I went to immediately because as a class bonus with a warrior, it's 2 damage, but it's only got 2 durability, so I can only get to launch 2 attacks on it, and that's something I learned quite quickly. 2 attacks is not a lot when it comes to enemy allies, and when it comes to health totals. The Executioner Spear may hit a little bit less, but that staying power is very powerful. So it's very cool for its cost. I would probably not run this when I'm editing the deck. When I change it into what I more want to play, this is probably not sticking around. I'm going to try and find some weapons that are a little bit stronger and give a bit more bang for their buck. The last of the normal element material cards is the Safeguard Amulet. This is a very cool card that I wish I'd read up more on. If I'd known more about the game, I'd be able to play around a little bit more. There was a couple of starter deck characters that like to do burn damage that's done directly outside of combat, and the Safeguard Amulet just says 4 of that does nothing. Now there is unpreventable damage, which is a real shame, but if I want to live long enough to get to Jin Undying, then this can be a great way to get there. Now I've seen some very powerful characters that were able to do a lot of burn damage, and Safeguard Amulet was in the starter deck event. At least I was able to go, your effect damage does nothing, and my opponent's like, it's technically from a hit, it's like it's an effect damage, so it doesn't do anything. I liked it a lot, and it's a great way to just essentially heal from an effect damage. Now we have our Exia element. So when you get your wind element as your starter, and then when you get to level 3, you get to unlock a second element, and this is Exia. We have the Berserker Plate and the Synergies of Sacrifice. The Berserker Plate is a warrior armor, and it says if your champion is a warrior, you gain 7 additional health. So Jin goes from a 28 health character up to a 35. This is really strong, but at the beginning of your recollection, when you pick up your memory back into your hand, you suffer 3 damage. So it is slowly killing you. You gain 7 damage, so essentially you gain 3 turns additional with this, but you are chipping away slowly over time. This can be quite important for Jin, because once he hits this immortal step, that doesn't matter. The burn doesn't bother you until you get to your end phase, and if you can heal up above 35, you're very strong. And when you take into account the Synergies of Sacrifice, this gets an additional 1 power for every 5 damage counters on your character. When it enters, you may sacrifice 1 to deal 5 unpreventable damage to your character. So if you have multiples of these, you get to keep burning away higher, and if you're in the immortal step, it doesn't matter if you get to 40, 45, 50 damage, you are not going to die, you do not lose until you get to the end phase, meaning this can get, if you are at max damage with a Berserker Plate, this gets an additional 7 damage. On top of that, if you go above that into the 40, 45, 50, you can get a lot of damage here, and as we've seen with the Berserker Plate and there's some other cards, you can deal yourself a lot of damage and get yourself to the point where you're hitting ridiculously hard and your opponent needs to have answers to this. It's very strong, it's very cool, and I'm really glad the person recommended me this off the material deck alone. But then we get to the standard deck, but then we get to the main deck, and you'll see why I kind of fell in love with this character, and I really did have a lot of fun. So let's start off with the list. Well, let's go for the list as it is on the box. 2 Banner Knights. Banner Knights are very cool. My opponents in the starter deck event saw these as big issues. While all your other allies and my weapons get +1 power. This means every ally in my deck gets +1, and then my Shuang, my Steel Halberd, my Executioner Spear get an additional 1 power. On top of that, it stacks. Now, this only does kick in once you get to level 2, so it can be a bit harder, and then it kind of incentivizes you to get to level 2. But it's very cool, and I do like Banner Knight, and my opponents did see it as a bit of an issue, as it's got quite a tanky health total at 3. Idle Thoughts is one I only got to play once. My opponents seemed to open with it every single round, and I got it in the final round where you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and then you put them back in any order. So you are able to just look at the top 4 and go, okay, I get a Exia card. I can't use that to level 3. Down to the bottom. If I can find some more floating memory, if I can find some attack spells, I get to essentially know how my next 4 turns are going to go. And that's a lot of information, a lot of forethought, and a great micro process that I get to put in going, I know what's coming, I know how I can get there. Can I predict what my opponent's going to be doing to the point where I can utilize these 4 cards the best? On top of that, it is floating memory. Floating memory is memory that you can spend from your discard as though it was in your memory zone. So if I want to level up, if I place my first card, and then next time I can level up by banishing this from discard and not go down a hand size, not utilize any renewable resources. It's very cool. Going on from there, we have Pierce the Heavens. We have Pierce the Heavens. This is a free damage attack. As long as your champion is Jin and he's leveled up this turn, this attack is +2 damage and is unblockable. So it cannot be intercepted. You cannot taunt him away. He is locked in on his target and he's taking them down with this Pierce the Heavens. Very cool. I did get to pop this off a couple of times, but a couple of times it was hard to do once you've leveled up. I need to learn a little bit more about the game, but a couple of times I saw this when I was at level 3, or I'd enjoy it after I'd just leveled up, and I was like, cool. It's a weird one, and I think it's very powerful and very well statted at a 3 cost for essentially 5 damage unblockable if you're Jin. I think that's really cool. It's just more, if you haven't just leveled up, it's a 3 damage for free. It seems well statted to myself, but let me know if you are a Grand Archive player how that is in the zeitgeist of the rest of the game. A very annoying card for my opponents in Regenerate. Draw a card into memory. So replace this card with a card you get access to next turn on a 2 cost. And then if your character is a cleric or warrior, if you've taken 10 or more damage, you get to heal 2. This is a big thing because Jin wants to stay alive. If I'm starting to creep up towards that 15, 20, 24, I want to stay alive, and Regenerate is a great way for me to stay alive. This recovery ability can put my opponents off. I annoyed one of my opponents very much because they kind of like, you're dead for exacties. I went, cool, recovery, and like, oh, okay, yeah, and then I got to kill him next turn. Next, we have the Safeguard Paladin. This is a really cool card that kind of makes her deceptive as to how much health she has. If non-combat damage would be dealt to Self-Guard Paladin, prevent 2 damage of that. So, if they try to deal 2 damage to Safeguard Paladin, if they try to go, yeah, you're going to die because they only have 2 health. They go, okay, I've got an effect, like I saw one of the guns that was like, okay, this dealt damage, I'll now deal damage to another ally. They went to deal damage to Safeguard Paladin, I was like, it doesn't work. Like, why? I get to prevent 2 damage of that because it's not a combat damage, it's an effect damage from combat. I'm like, oh, are you sure that's how it works? We could pull Card Judgment. Yeah, no, that's how it works. Very cool. Just a 2/2 for free. Not the best statted, but forcing your opponent to have to take this down in combat and not utilize abilities, or having to waste big abilities to get rid of it. Absolutely solid, especially if I can get some Banner Knights down as well. Savage Swing is a weapon polearm, so triggers a Jin Feint Defiant ability and just gets to, it's a 2 cost, 2 polearm attack. But if your character is a warrior, if your champion is a warrior, which we are, we get Floating Memory. Floating Memory is free resources, gives us access to leveling up quicker without going down resources, gives us access to pulling weapons, which is really cool. Trusty Steed was an awkward one for me. I only saw it a couple of times, but on enter, your other allies get +2 damage until the end of the turn. This is kind of a win more situation and kind of feeds into what I think Jin's playstyle is. You flood the board with units. You get as many as you can out, and you kind of soak up the damage you can. You let your board build up. You get to immortality. You go, I'm not dying. I'm hitting you hard, and my Trusty Steed is going to get stronger from my level 1 ability. Or even just, I've got this big line of units, and you cannot kill me, you cannot get through them, and I'm going to pin you down and beat you with all. I'm going to group around you and kick you to death like the JoJo meme. Veteran Soldier is one that I'm not sold on. Honestly, it's a 5 cost, 2 damage, 3 health floating memory. The floating memory is really cool, but there's not many ways to discard this unit. So I need this unit to die in combat. And in the start of it, nobody was killing them because they realized it was 3 floating memory. For a 5 cost, 2 damage, 3 health, I do not know how good that is. The floating memory is strong, and if I was able to pop off a bit of damage with a polearm, making this a 3/3 did make it a threat. But I would start off with this card. I'd just go cool, 5 down, 1, keep 1 in hand, pass turn, and game in the first round I was like, oh, that's a really cool card. By game 3, it's like, she doesn't do much. I'd much rather get out some more low-cost units that have a much higher impact, but we'll get into those a little bit later on. I'm not sold on Veteran Soldier, but let me know, am I right in that? Have I correctly identified Veteran Soldier as being a cuttable card, or is this a card that should be played? I hated drawing this late game. It just became a card I wanted to get banished by memory. Speaking of 5 cost units that I didn't hate, we have the Eminent Commander. This is a 5 cost 2/4. But why, Brett, would you like a 2/4 more than a 2/3 when they cost the same? Because of the class bonus. This card costs 3 less to activate if your champion has dealt 3 or more damage this turn. So if I can level up into Jin level 2, and I can hit them for 3 damage because I get to hit them for 2, and then awaken and hit them for 2 again, hit them for 1 or 2 again, I get to play this as a 2 cost. Now a 2 cost 2/4, that's absolute value. No floating memory, no that, but this is a big butted character that can soak up some damage, that also hits fairly hard from units that I can see, and on a 2 cost, very strong. We just have to make sure we can hit for that 3 damage, and by combining weapons and attacks, we can usually get there, especially with things like Pierce the Heavens. We have Favourable Winds. Now, Favourable Winds, I'm not too sure. Honestly, Favourable Winds, allies you control get +1 health until the end of the turn and floating memory. As a 1 cost, that floating memory is very cool, but that +1 health to allies honestly didn't matter that much. It's a fast spell, so you can drop it whenever. A lot of times, I kind of dropped it at the end of my opponent's turn. I kind of went, okay, I'm going to try and fill up my discard with this and hope they didn't notice. There was a couple of times where my opponents were trying to kill my Banner Knights, and I was able to protect them with Favourable Winds. For what it does, it seems fairly statted. I think there's just better cards out there this could be. Along with Veteran Soldier, this is probably one that I cut and try and find a floating memory 1 cost that does a little bit more. Again, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I'm a brand new to this game, and I would love to learn more about why Veteran Soldier Favourable Winds are a lot stronger than I'm giving them credit. Or I'm hoping that I've kind of adapted to this game quite quickly, and I've identified 2 cards in here that can immediately kind of get cut. Materializing Polearms. If you are a warrior, this costs 1 less. So it's a 3 cost to let you pull a polearm from your material deck, still paying the cost. So the idea behind this is you create 3 or 4 memory to use to spend for the polearm. It's a self-containing synergy, and I like self-contained synergy. I create the memory to materialize the polearm from playing this card. I like this a lot. For a 3 cost, I'm not so much. It's a great kind of gotcha moment, but for 3 or 4 cost cards, I would expect it to be doing more. I would rather be running more attacks than just going, here's a 3 cost card that takes me down a memory just to materialize a weapon that I'm probably going to get access to quickly. Reclaim is one I've been told is very good. It's got floating memory and allows me to bounce an ally unit back to my hand. I might just be showing my ignorance here, or I might just be too aggressive of a person. I never played Reclaim. I saw the potential of it. Like, if one of my allies is being attacked, or if I want to attack with an ally, once it's rested, I get to pick it up. I can save them from being killed. I can save them from being rested, and I can play them again and swing with them again and do some really cool things. It can have some very cool synergistic plays with them, and it's a great way to keep my banner knights alive, bounce them back to my hand and go, cool, next time I get to play them again. And for 2 cost, it's very powerful. I just think where I am now, this is too high a skill level card for me to be playing at the moment, if that makes sense. Let's try and get through that. I've just realised I have been doing this for like half an hour. Swift Recruit. Swift Recruit was absolutely hilarious. So in game 3, I drop in my first cards going first. I go Swift Recruit, and like, yeah. And then I draw my next one. It's a Swift Recruit again. I go cool, Swift Recruit. And my opponent goes, you got 3 interceptors in the first 2 turns. Yep, you are not touching me. And yeah, they didn't. They purposely didn't attack. They were trying to set up a 2-cost 1/2 intercept with floating memory. Is solid. I love this card so much because it just goes, you want to hit me, I say no. On top of that, because you killed the Swift Recruit, I now have access to memory. I can level up. I can utilize my bigger cards. I can materialize more without going down resources, and I denied you an attack. Absolute cinema. Love Swift Recruit. Swift Recruit was a very powerful card in here, and I absolutely loved it. But not as much as I loved Wind Cutter. Now, Wind Cutter is a card that I instantly fell in love with. I'm not quite sure how well I know this game, but I messaged a couple of people that I know play this game, and they also had never looked at Wind Cutter. 2-cost, a 2-cost 1 damage attack. But if you are a ranger or warrior, it's a 2 damage attack. And if you hit, so if your opponent doesn't do any shenanigans to stop the damage from hitting, on hit, whether it's a champion or an ally, you reveal a memory at random. If it is a wind elemental, you get to put the Wind Cutter into memory. Like I said early in the video, champions can only attack if you have an attack or a weapon. Weapons have durability, they don't last forever, but this attack can. If I don't get unlucky on materialization, or if I have enough floating memory, it doesn't matter, I get to swing out every single turn. Especially if I utilize things like my favorable winds or my materialized polearm into my memory and go, I'm guaranteed to build this into memory. I'm guaranteed to put this into my memory. I'm guaranteed to hit you in the face again next turn for 2 damage. It doesn't sound like much, but imagine getting slapped every 6 seconds by someone, and there was nothing you could really do about it. That is Wind Cutter. I love this card, and the people I've spoken to about it had overlooked it and just said, no, that card seems absolutely cracked from the way you're describing it being played. Let's move on to our Exia cards now. We have the Bloodborne Bladesman. The Bloodborne Bladeswan. My God, this is an impactful card. It is a 3-cost, 6 health, 3 damage card. Whenever Bloodbound Bladeswan deals damage, you deal damage to your champion. So for Jin, that's really cool. On top of that, it gets +1 for every 10 damage dealt. So if you have got your chest plate down and you're at 35, this can become a 6/6. Using the polearm from the Exia, if you can if you are above 20 damage, which by the time you get to level 3, you probably will be, this deals 5 damage. Which means if this hits your opponent's champion, it's hitting you for 5, which unlocks the next threshold point for the Shunjang sacrifice, meaning you're dealing an additional 1 just from hitting with this. That's so cool. That's so synergistic. I love it. Enrage is a 4-cost that costs 2 less if you're above 20 damage. So all of these are going to be more perpetuated on reduced costs and dealing damage to yourself. So if you have 20 more damage, it costs 2, and it deals 4 unpreventable damage to your champion. And then their next attack gets +1 damage for every 4 damage counters on them. So if you get this to 28 damage, it's dealing 7 additional damage. So again, once you get to level 3, you're kind of utilizing this. I'm going to keep hitting myself. That's why the full team memory is so important. You need the cards in your hand. You need the resources to play all of these in one turn and hit your opponent with double digits. Jin is the kind of character that can OTK if you can get enough damage onto Jin and drop some of these bad boys down. Exia Sight, 0 cost. You just get to play it, draw a card. On 20+, the next card you play has 1 less to activate. Meaning, again, you're replacing the card in your hand with something else. It's cost you no memory to do it. And you get to make the next one cheaper. So you can turn Enrage from a 2 cost to a 1 cost. And you've just drawn the card to fuel that. That is so good. Heaven Duend is a 4 cost attack that says on 20+ damage, attack everything. So it's 4 damage, and if you can add it with things like the Blood Sworn, the Enrage, you get to pop off and just go, your army, your entire band of allies, they're gone. 1 swift pole arm swing and they have all been decapitated. They're all down. Your defenses are now wide open for my allies to move in. And the last card we have in the Exia is the Mind Flesh. If you're 25 or more damage, so if you're only 3 away from losing, it will add in during your end step. It costs 2 less, and it says recover 8. So this is the kind of card you want to be playing, because you want to hit that 28 damage, and then before your end step, you just go, oh yeah, I'll build 2 memory, or if you're above 25 health, it's free to play, and you go, I'll heal 8. Can you get me above 28? And can you get me above 36? And even higher, I guess it goes up to like 43. No, it goes up to like 44 if you've got the breastplate down. And just go, yeah, I will heal 8 damage. And hopefully I'll draw another one. Or maybe I can dig into it with all this draw power. And so my end phase, my health total is below my max. I get to live on. And you've got to get me to the point where in my next end phase, you're going to kill me. This is such a solid character. I do appreciate the member of staff who told me to play this, because honestly, I loved playing this. It's only a 1-star difficulty, so it kind of explains why it's so synergistic and friendly. It's one of the easiest starter decks to play. And it's a champion that wants to support their allies. It wants to diminish their opponent's resources. It wants to sit there and go, you're not killing me, and then get to level 3 and go, now you're definitely not killing me. I absolutely love this card. I love this. Windcutter, absolutely solid card. And as an introduction to the game, after playing the demo and just going up to the desk and going, what side events can a person who's only done the demo play? Doing side events, play Jin. I went, cool, I'll play Jin. And I had a blast. Despite what my record says, I went 2-1, not 1-2. And I had a lot of fun playing it. Like I said, I'll get onto the Kongming and the Tenoris decks as soon as I can. This was really cool. If you want more Grand Archive content, do let me know. I want to introduce this channel, but only if people want to see it. And I'm really excited to get more games in. I'm probably going to stick with the starter deck stuff for now, because I don't know where I'm going. If you have any advice, if you've got any tips, or you know any resources that can help me get better at this game, feel free to drop them in the comments. And have yourselves a great time, and I will see you at game night. Bye.